AFR Talk.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, you can be among the first every morning to find out what today's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. You are listening to Focal Point on the AFR Talk Network, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. I want to switch gears in just a moment. I want to play that Lindsey Graham clip. Remember, you and I are just alarmed about this, that the federal government has ordered Verizon, and Verizon has meekly complied, turning over tens of millions of phone records, every domestic phone call. It's not, and this is under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. There's nothing foreign about this. These are calls that originate in the United States and they terminate in the United States. What is the NSA even doing here? Because this is it's not part of their charter. Their job is foreign surveillance, foreign intelligence. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, when President Bush used it, he used it to track phone calls that came from foreign countries to parties in the United States and vice versa. It specifically was designed to track calls that were being made between people in foreign countries that represented a threat to the security of the United States. That's not what these calls are about. These are entirely domestic calls. They originate in the United States and they terminate in the United States. Now here's Lindsey Graham. Bless his pea-picking heart. Doesn't seem to have a problem. Let's listen.
A Verizon customer. I don't mind Verizon turning over records to the government if the government's going to make sure that they try to match up a known terrorist phone with somebody in the United States. I don't think you're talking to terrorists. I know you're not. I know I'm not, so we don't have anything to worry about. I'm glad the activity is going on, but it is limited to tracking people who are suspected to be terrorists and who they may be talking to. And I'm glad the NSA is trying to find out what terrorists are up to overseas and inside the country.
Well, so Lindsey Graham apparently doesn't mind that Verizon's coughing up all this information. Maybe Verizon gives him who knows how many dollars for his campaign. He could owe him something. So it might not bother Lindsey Graham, but it bothers me, and I know, as a point of fact, it bothers you. Now, what President Obama has done is made a couple of very dangerous appointments. Number one, he's appointed Susan Rice, who was the UN ambassador, appointed her to become the National Security Advisor. That's NSA. So Susan Rice, this is the woman that went out and lied through her teeth to the American people on every Sunday morning talk show about the cause of the Benghazi attack. She was out there blaming it on this video, and our intelligence and our president, our State Department, knew the night it happened that this was an al-Qaeda attack. It had nothing to do with some kind of video on YouTube, but she went out there as a faithful lapdog and just told one lie after another on Sunday morning television. Now, there's another wrinkle to this, and I want you to hear Carville's take on this, because he says, look, Obama has a motive here. I mean, this is basically, he's just flipping off the American people is what he's doing. But there's another wrinkle to this. If she becomes a part of the executive branch, then President Obama can claim executive privilege, and he can keep her from giving testimony. I mean, a lot of us want to know, where did you get these talking points? What did you know? Did you know this was an al-Qaeda thing, or were you such a dupe that you believed what you were told? Were you that lacking in awareness? Were you that lacking in intelligence that you didn't even raise a question about this? Did you just blindly read these talking points without having any idea whether they could be supported? I mean, there are questions, a lot of questions that this woman needs to be asked. And by President Obama appointing her to be the National Security Advisor, he can claim executive privilege, and those secrets will die with her. Now, there's another thing. Remember, we complained about Susan Rice vociferously. She just got a promotion. So she has been honored and rewarded for lying through her teeth, liar, liar, pants on fire to the American people. She got rewarded for this. You know, in a just culture, you would get penalized. You would get punished. You would get fired for this kind of conduct. Instead, she is getting rewarded. And so when President Obama appoints her, gives her a promotion, he's just sticking his thumb right in the eye of the American people, and no less a personage than James Carville recognizes that and says it. Let's listen.
my guess is that he wanted her to be Secretary of State, and he felt like she kind of got railroaded there, and this is a kind of in-your-face appointment, but he obviously thinks a great deal of Ambassador Rice. Like I say, he wanted to be Secretary of State, so she is not confirmable, and I think it's like a message that he's going to stick by. He views her as a competent person and probably as a friend of his, and I think this is an in-your-face appointment. I think he feels good about making it.
So twice James Carville says this as an in-your-face appointment. That's what this is. It's petty. It's juvenile. It's immature. It's President Obama saying to the American people and the conservatives, take that. It's a pecan pie right in the face. Carville says it twice. This is an in-your-face appointment, and he says President Obama feels good about making it. President Obama likes to stick a pecan pie in the face of the American people. It makes him happy all over. Rob, let's back up to clip 7 before we go to 10. Here's Ed Henry of Fox News, and he's talking to Jay Carney about what we were just talking about. This woman has proven that she is a dupe or she's a liar. One way or another, she is completely, hopelessly unqualified to be the national security advisor. If she can be fooled that easily, 4 days later, after everybody knows the truth, and she can be fooled into going out there and telling outright falsehoods, well, then that means she's not qualified. She's not competent. I mean, part of being a national security advisor is kind of smelling a rat. She couldn't smell a rat if it was buried under her nose. And then the second part is if she knew that they were falsehood and still went out and did it, then her character disqualifies her from public office. And Ed Henry presses Jay Carney on this very thing. Let's listen.
Why did various intelligence officials say, various testimony elsewhere, that they almost immediately knew that this was terror? And if she's so experienced in these matters, why wouldn't she see that as they saw it, regardless of what the talking points say?
So you're suggesting that a senior member of the national security team should actually disagree with the assessments of the intelligence community provided by the CIA because somebody who appeared on Fox News perhaps said something?
No, because actually the intelligence, at one point General Petraeus said the talking
since
points he didn't want to agree with anymore because the talking points had been changed so much, the CIA director didn't think they were worth anything.
Ed, I honestly think...
Isn't that what he said? And Ed Henry is exactly right. The intelligence community, CIA, was not down with these talking points. The General Petraeus said, look, I would prefer that these talking points not even be used. You've completely whitewashed the fact that this was an al-Qaeda operation. You've expunged it from the report. The information we gave you, the intelligence community, we gave you information. It's al-Qaeda. We gave you information that there had been numerous threats against diplomatic posts in Libya, including Benghazi, in the prior months. We warned you about that. All of that's been leached out of this. I don't want to have anything to do with these talking points. They're not accurate. They're fabricated. They're made up. I would prefer that we not even use them. So that's where the intelligence community was coming from. So Jay Carney now caught in this web of lies and deceit. Now, the other appointment was the appointment of Samantha Power to replace Susan Rice as the ambassador to the UN. Now, Samantha Power hates the nation of Israel. She is married to Cass Sunstein. He's the guy that thinks animals and plants and rocks and trees ought to be given constitutional rights. I mean, the guy is just way out there in the ozone somewhere. And she hates Israel. In fact, I want to play a soundbite from an interview that she did in 2002 where she says we ought to stop supplying the Israeli military in order to do this. Let's listen.
Literally billions of dollars not in servicing Israelis, military, but actually in investing in the new state of Palestine, in investing billions of dollars it would probably take also to support, I think, what will have to be a mammoth protection force, not of the old, Srebrenica kind or the Rwanda kind, but a meaningful military presence, because it seems to me at this stage, and this is true of actual genocides as well, and not just major human rights abuses, which we're seeing there, but is that you have to go in as if you're serious. You have to put something on the line, and unfortunately, imposition of a solution on unwilling parties is dreadful. I mean, it's a terrible thing to do. It's fundamentally undemocratic.
But I'm perfectly willing to do it. Imposing a solution on unwilling people, that is the United States imposing military power on the nation of Israel. That's what she's talking about. The use of our military to go into Israel and force Israel to do something it does not want to do. She is now our ambassador to the UN. And Jeff Reed, my producer, Jeff, you and I were talking about some of the other indications that President Obama is not a friend of Israel. No matter what he says, he's not a friend of Israel. And some of that has to do with the fact that he and his administration have made efforts to leak top secret confidential information about Israeli bases and missile sites.
Right. The latest one was Monday, where the U.S. government leaked information about a $25 million project. It was a top secret base in Israel at an undisclosed location that was going to house the Arrow missile system, which is it intercepts missiles in outer space. They released, I think it was 1,000 pages of details of this place, down to the thickness of the walls.
So this is a base that's designed to provide security for the Israeli people. That's a pretty important part of their system.
Yeah.
And they're surrounded by hostile adversaries, and so we've got our own government is out there releasing detailed information about how that thing is to be built to Israel's enemies.
Right. And this isn't the first time it's happened. Some people may remember them. They released information about a secret base in Azerbaijan, which is right up there in the Caspian Sea next to Georgia. It was a secret base, air base that they were going to have to either attack Iranian nuclear plants or to provide search and rescue after such an attack.
So they'd purchased this place as an airfield,
Right.
And part of it, Jeff, I think, was in case they needed to launch a strike into Iran, they had to have an air base because the distance, they'd have to refuel. So if they had this air base in Azerbaijan, they would be able to fly the mission to Iran. They'd be able to come back there and refuel and get back to Israel. That's obviously, again, a critical component of their national security, something that ought to be kept top secret, and this administration divulged that to their enemies.
Right, and some people would argue to say that arming the Egyptians is a bad move. It's a betrayal of Israel. I think what one of the top generals in the IDF said it best. He said, Obama talks about having our back all the time. How come it feels like he has his hands on our throat?
And maybe holding a dagger. Yeah. All right, Jeff Reed, my producer, thanks for that information, Jeff. Appreciate that. So I think, really, ladies and gentlemen, we have an anti-Semite for a president. That's the bottom line. President Obama is an anti-Semite. Back in 2. Stay with us.